So we've been doing the Research Toolbox series for a number of years, and I don't think we've ever done one specifically on the TLEF. So this really is the year, being that we have successfully been funded on 4 TLEF projects, and all of our project leads have happily agreed to kind of share their experiences with us. So what I've done is asked each of them to speak to kind of 5 points, so they have 5 minutes to cover a little bit about the planning for their project development process, about what the actual project they're doing is, and then now that it's been funded, some of the opportunities and challenges around launching and executing the project, and finally what the deliverables are on their project. So we'll have plenty of time for discussion and dialogue, but to begin with, I will get Ranji to come tell us a little bit about her project.
So thanks, Marilee. So our project is called Developing Interdisciplinary Health and Human Service Education to Meet the Needs of Vulnerable Populations. And we are the 1 year in the small TLEF with about $47,000 in our budget to do that. Our overall project is around building capacity for the university to be able to offer interdisciplinary education within the context of health and human service delivery for people who experience significant marginalization and inequities in access to services and receipt of services essential for daily life. Our kind of outcome is looking at a 3-credit online interdisciplinary course, and the reason that it sits so nice with the TLEF grant is we're actually looking to advance critical pedagogical approaches and thinking about critical pedagogy in actually how we do interdisciplinary health and human service education, and to actually think some more critically and advance what we know about inclusive curricular development. And by inclusion, students as well as key stakeholders within the health and human service sector that are in service provision as well as in service receipt. And so these are kind of the overarching aims of our project. And I promise we do have time, we have lots of time for questions, so I'm just gonna zoom along. And so our proposal has developed over a significant period of time that's attached to a program of research that's actually tackling how do we do effective service delivery. So we really had to look at what the need or the gap was that was being addressed, and how, why that gap existed. So for example, we had to do a full environmental scan to see what kind of education in this area looked at, existed, and came to the realization that there was none in Canada that specifically met the needs that we'd identified. We had to look at the best way to address this gap in education and preparation, as well as who, as I said, all of these types of questions, that who needs to be involved, and figuring those kinds of things. And also in the construction of this, we actually had to look at what were the contributions that we could make to teaching scholarship, as well as student engagement in curriculum design. So thinking about building capacity for students in their future roles who want to do curricular development. And then we really had to see, how does this all fit with what TLEF has to offer? Do we actually fit within the funding mandate and with the call for funding across those things? And our team, just to speak to that in terms of who, is a complex interdisciplinary team across the health and human service sector. It's an advisory of people who our course is designed to develop clinicians and practitioners with the ability to engage and meet their needs. Particularly women affected by violence, people who use drugs, people who have mental health issues, and people who are less likely to engage with mainstream services or to experience significant discrimination when they engage with services. So all of those kinds of things were the big pieces of the puzzle that actually went into the actual planning and development. And we had to also bring in pedagogical expertise around what are the strategies, how do we think about this, and actually putting something together that's designed to advance education in our core area. So in launching, and it's always fun to launch a new project, one of the things that has been new for some of our stakeholders is the importance of ethics review as a starting point, and ensuring that we have ethics approval as we move forward, so we can actually investigate the process as an effective way to approaching education and curricular design and implementation. We have to revisit our budget and people. Our budget's $47,000, and a new online course can be up to as much as $150,000. So what other sources of funding and money do we need to attach to, considering the type of stakeholder engagement that's required in the time that's required? So we have a year. Setting timelines and deliverables, include reporting infrastructure for our team, this very diverse, interdisciplinary, and multi-sectoral team, as well as the School of Nursing, so that we're feeding back. This is a course that we're looking to develop as a non-nursing elective potentially, so how we actually engage with the school as a stakeholder, and actually looking at launching the core theoretical tenets and getting the team on the same page as to what's the theoretical underpinnings and the empirical underpinnings for the course. And where we're at right now is we're starting to do this. We're in the middle of the BREB application, but also developing what a curricular design map looks like. So thinking about what are the core processes that students will be developing and taking the course. So thinking through the competencies around critical thinking, systematic inquiry, trauma and violence informed care. So really getting a handle on what those core elements are, and then what's the content necessary. So before we get into that, we've been doing this work for a long time. Many of us have been involved as clinicians and as researchers in this area, and we're just starting to kind of think that through while we're in the BREB application kind of process. And then some of the challenges. There's so many purposes potentially to this course, balancing the need for continuing professional development with an elective course for undergrads. So we know, for example, outreach workers who are not with a regulated profession often have a BA or a BSc. And so how do we match that need with also people who are in the field doing this kind of work who have a need for continuing professional development, and how we're going to grapple with that. Attending to the scholarship of course development. Sometimes we get so caught in getting the course ready that we forget to study the process and learn what we're learning as we're going, and to ensure that our pedagogical approaches are embedded really clearly. As I said, our budget, and do we have the right amount of money, or what can we do with the amount of money we have? One of the other pieces for us is UBC versus another site hosting this course. And so those kinds of things are really important to think about, and what that process looks like. And then sustainability, not only are we developing this course, but what is the sustainability for teaching and curricular vision? Whenever you're developing something new, it's not a one-size-fits-all or a one-shot deal. There's all those kinds of things that we need to think about. And our deliverables are, we hope, this is so far, our 3-credit interdisciplinary course, suitable for undergraduate students and people seeking continuing professional development who do want to meet the needs of both groups. A clear evaluation plan to assess acceptability, feasibility, and impact for the course that extends beyond the TLEF funding period. We need to know, in a year we won't know how well we did over the long term or for curricular revision. It's a strategy for course uptake in a growing program of research that builds capacity. So I have a program of research where people who are actively engaged in the work need to take this course outside of the clinician component of this. So how are we going to balance and work on that with a strategy that it can fit into that? And it's not just me, it's the partners that I work with across Canada in particular. Our publications concerning case-based learning and critical pedagogy, how can we advance the field of how we bring these ideas together, and our enhanced capacity of students and the course development team in curricular design. Those are our core kinds of things. That's mine. Thank you.
So we're just going to power along and get people to save their questions till the end. We have Gertrude Boschma up next. So I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thanks for inviting and putting this all together, Natalie. I'm happy to report on the project that is designed, and I will speak about it in a minute, to focus on a particular component of our own curriculum here in the school. That is the Term 4 clinical practice courses. And so I have quite literally followed Natalie's invitation to address first the planning process and any lessons learned. I understood lessons learned from actually doing a TLEF application. And so that's what I'm starting with, rather than on the project itself. But what whoever considers a TLEF project, I would strongly suggest to start with actually attending the information session of the TLEF community over at CTLT, because it really became clear to me that is the process that the group basically follows in order to support an application or see an application as strong. And then also in terms of the process, connect around the proposal development with support staff available at the TLEF office. And just to sort of an example from my own process, you have, as you will probably have seen if you have looked at the guidelines, not only set goals for your project, but you have also to indicate how to evaluate eventually the project. But I really came to it with trying to evaluate my initial goals. And it was through the advice of the actual TLEF team that they helped me to sort of more gear my evaluation towards how do I, in the end, can show that the project had the impact or the influence. So it really was helpful to work with them. Basically, it helped to structure my own project, but also to sort of see what are the expectations of the grant facilitators groups. And then what they said ongoing is have you talked to the right people? They just seem to not be necessarily looking at only what you as an individual or what your plan have to offer, but also how the TLEF is designed to really support overall educational structure within not only the school, but within the university. So they would really like to see alignment with other efforts in the university to enhance education. So when they say, have you talked to the right people, is rather saying, have you talked to the groups that are either good to collaborate with or provide you some, will be able to provide you with some support, or will be able to provide you with sufficient feedback on how to make it into a successful project. So, and that sort of then translates into the team that you develop around your project, basically. And so, example, in this year's round was really an emphasis on competency-based education in the university at large. So, in some ways, that needs to be incorporated then in your planning process. And then tips for success on proposal development. I can't say it otherwise, but really follow the steps of the application exactly. And so develop a team. That is really the focus of the TLEF projects, to work with a team. And so another tip for success that was well received, that within this particular planning, and Vicky alluded to it as well, as to its large part of a larger plan, this particular project. And so in this case, we had started out with a small pilot project within the school with a small amount of internal funding, and that did work well, not only for myself to build upon or to organize the team around, but also to then introduce the topic or the plan that you have with some success or experience with that drawn from that initial small project. And so that gives you some start to build upon. And then another advice is to really consider early on to consult with Natalie, as he is the support person in the school, for helping to with grant application development, but particularly the budget is always a crucial point as to how that fits. And so it helps you also to think not only, oh, what plan do I have, but what do I exactly ask the money for, or how does it fit with other needs, like Vicky also alluded to. So what is the project that we had asked for? That is to actually develop, as some of you may know, that we have in Term 4 currently in our undergraduate curriculum, 2 main clinical practice foci, that is focus on primary health care and on mental health care. So students go out and obtain practice in those 2 domains. But then on the other hand, there is currently an intention and tendency within the health authorities to offer these 2 streams of practice in an integrated fashion. And so that sort of formed the background for this particular project to say, can we align, we in some ways in our curriculum design had sort of planned those courses in the same term already with the idea in mind of a change in practice in the wider health authorities. But then what are the challenges in terms of the curriculum and what are the opportunities in terms of really developing that clinical learning experience in a way and facilitate it that sort of fits with that change in practice, like having more students, if possible, be placed in a clinical practicum where they can basically meet both sets of competencies. And so that is in part the background. Why is it relevant? That we really seek to provide adequate clinical learning for the students within complex community and mental health settings. And so that is where the team stems from on this project. Ranji is on the project, Jill is on the project, she teaches currently in the mental health stream. We have a number of agencies that potentially will be able to facilitate the students. And then we propose to address with 3 interventions. And again, that means to articulate also the sort of pedagogical structure that you have in mind. And we have an integrated learning model proposed that is sometimes referred to as hub and spokes. Basically meaning you have the students in one particular setting, but then they can reach out to have experiences, whether it is actually clinical or it is shadow, in sort of a range of related sites or settings or organizations to have an integrated set of competencies to focus on. And here I can address that in the challenges as well, but you see there immediately that you're also limited by our bureaucratic structures that structure the clinical experience. Because I can think, oh, the students can go A, B, and C, but then we have an HSP net that says, no, you have to ask permission for each of these steps or for even each of these hours, or, you know. So I think to sort of say, okay, great, we have a model, is basically meaning how do we articulate it theoretically, pedagogically, but also how do we work with it logistically. And that is a...
You're at 10 minutes right now.
Okay, well, then I'm almost done.
We have 5, so.
Here are some of the challenges that I now just spoke to, how to link it with the curriculum, but also with the agencies. And then how do you then hire the CIs in alignment with that plan? And the deliverables are to bring structure to that clinical learning experience, almost like a week-by-week clinical teaching guide. What would that look like? Would that be helpful? Can you provide that online? Then create a collaborative team that also involves the students and their feedback, and to achieve eventually a very successful Term 4. Thank you.
So we'll get Suzanne to come up next, please. So Suzanne has more than 5 slides, but she promised me to do it in 5 minutes.
I promised. Because I'm a visual person, and I want to, and I'm starting my timer, so I will be done in 5 minutes. I wanted to introduce what the title of our project is, which is Interprofessional Lactation Module for the Health Sciences, IP Lactation. And to acknowledge that I have some disclosure pieces that I always do whenever I talk, and that this could not be done without a huge team of people. And my colleagues have mentioned who their people were. You can visually see representatives from different schools on campus, different universities, and my practice partners. And just to mention that this was easier to do because my Brazilian colleagues are here doing their postdocs, and I actually feel like I have a lactation research, education, and breastfeeding support team. So what are the lessons learned in the planning process? If at first you don't succeed, try again. We submitted for the $250,000 large TLEF last summer, hoping to create an entire module, and we're told that we'd be better off going for this one, so we did. Having a strong connection to theory, research, and best practice standards as you're defining what you will be doing, and then gathering a really broad team and incorporating multiple disciplines, sites, the variety of expertise and background. And as my colleagues have mentioned, they really want to see on the TLEFs that you are integrating faculty, students, practice partners, and patients. And so that was a key component. Doing an environmental scan, I think Gertrude mentioned the pilot project. We asked people about their experience with lactation education from midwifery, nursing, and physio, which were the areas. And we were very clear in our project goals about the number of students and identifying other benefits that our deliverable would provide. Our proposal development tips for success: schedule time to write together. We had bi-monthly lactation research team meetings, an hour set aside every Tuesday morning, go-to meeting, so partners at various sites could get together. That kept us on process. And then what everyone else has said, feedback from colleagues who've been successful in the past, getting to look at other funding, allowing for enough turnaround time so that the team can provide feedback, meeting one-on-one with the TLEF staff. Nicole and Flaviana both had sit-downs, and then at the end, as we were doing the last draft, and then making sure Marilee has her eyes on the final proposal, especially the budget, as has been mentioned. So what are we purporting to do? We're going to start off with a scoping review, half of which we've already done because we really didn't think we were getting this funding. And looking at health professional education resources and curriculum related to lactation. And we are going pretty globally wide here, and defining the current didactic hands-on training related to lactation for midwifery, nursing, and physiotherapy students. So that's where having practice partners in those departments looking at the curriculum specifically and getting feedback. Our intention is to design, create, and implement one open educational resource. I'd love to do the whole course, Vicki. That's what I wanted to. And incorporate faculty capacity building about teaching innovatively. So you might guess that my innovation is simulation, but I'll be using the Baby-Friendly Initiative 10 Steps guidelines from Canada and the guiding framework there to develop the curriculum. It will include cultural safety and trauma-informed care. This is intimate care components, and we will be evaluating module and learning experiences. So on hand, the learner self-efficacy, knowledge, skill acquisition, and attitudes, but also that translation of practice into their clinical sites and clinical components. Again, true confessions, we actually ran this as pilot last week in the OB course, so we have a really good baseline for what we'll be doing for the bigger project with all of the disciplines. As part of launching it, some of our current challenges are coordinating the team. As everyone has met, we've got a group in the Hive, which is our anatomy colleagues who have a lot of animated and innovative technology on hand. They're going to help us incorporate some of those pieces for the open educational resources. And to do that, we'll need to clarify expectations of team members and incorporate some of our pilot project findings. We anticipate not thinking too broadly and doing the big course, but keeping this to the module, and getting more funding and getting feedback in a timely manner. And the opportunities which have occurred is I'm now co-PI on the Women's Health Research Cluster, and there is provincial planning within the Baby Friendly Institute initiative that is looking to further evaluate some of that. And I think my timer just went off. So the deliverables are interprofessional lactation, open educational resource. That is Claudia Krebs in anatomy who's given me that term, which means that it will be available to all the health professional faculty and students at UBC. So our goal is to be rolling this out across UBC Health. We want practice-ready practitioners who are competent to provide families evidence-based care related to infant feeding and provide it as foundational knowledge with hands-on practice. And I just wanted to remind you that it should be theoretically based, which it is. And I'm done. Anyone interested in lactation, please contact me. Or becoming part of SOTL.
Thank you, Suzanne. And last but not least, we have Campbell and O'Flynn-Magee. I might get you to come around the other side because there's a bunch of wires here.
Of course. Thanks very much, Marilee, and hello, everyone. I know many of you, but not all of you. And so my TLEF project is entitled Nurturing Their Own or Eating Their Young, Fostering Students' Capacity to Address Nurse Bullying Behaviours. Just need my glasses. There we go. And I just wanted to put it in context a little bit. And we've been doing work in the school. Myself as lead, Ranji, who's here, is part of the work that we're doing. Paddy Rodney, whom I think everyone probably knows is part of the work, and a lot of students over the years. So probably over the last 3 years, we've been developing some work related to helping students address bullying if they witness or experience it. And the stats are pretty alarming, both in our school and also out there, and not just in nursing, but in other healthcare professions, especially medicine. Medicine and nursing seem to be the two healthcare professions where bullying is an extraordinary, alarming problem, and it's very, very prevalent. And so what we have been doing is thinking about it as a framework, and we've come up with Bullying in Nursing Education, a relational action framework, which has 3 prongs. I just want to very briefly contextualize the TLEF, and those 3 prongs include, number 1, policy. So the notion of students asked us if they witness or experience bullying, they didn't know quite what to do or where to go. And so a number of years ago, students requested that we would create something so that they would know where to go and whom to go to, and to have something in writing. That has been completed as a set of procedures that help us to enact the respectful environment statement here at UBC. And then education is prong number 2, thinking about education for students and education for faculty, especially clinical instructors who work with students, as you know, in the clinical area. The clinical area is the most cited context in which bullying occurs, and so that probably won't be a surprise to those of who work in practice. And then the 3rd prong is clinical practice partnerships. That's sort of the future. But that's a framework, and so that's just a little bit of context to give you in terms of the TLEF. And of those prongs, one of the education prongs is for students, and we're calling it, and have called it, the CRAB project. So the CRAB project stands for Cognitive Rehearsal to Address Bullying. Cognitive rehearsal is a little bit deductive, where you give people scripts and they practice those scripts. So although it's called the CRAB because we love it as an acronym, we love our original watercolour that was painted by one of our students, part of the project. And for all of those reasons, we're keeping with that. It has a bit of a ring to it, like you remember it. But really what we've been doing more is forum theatre. So forum theatre and cognitive rehearsal to address bullying. Oh, hi, Krista, I didn't see you there. So this is the CRAB project, and this is what we're focusing on in the TLEF. So one of those prongs, one of the education prongs, and this specific one is mostly for students, but also we're interested in using it perhaps for clinical instructors. So in terms of the TLEF, then I really thought about what might be helpful for those of you who will be applying to know. And so I'm a bit of an optimist, and so last year I applied for a small TLEF, but the optimist part meant that 48 hours before it was due, I said to the team, give it a go. And they said, And so, you know, we gave it a go, and we were successful. And so that's an important lesson I learned. Don't, you know, think about it 48 hours in advance. But it was great learning. And I have some of the feedback that I thought might be useful to share. So timeline is key. As Gertrude and others have mentioned, the workshops that they put on are key. Even this year, I didn't actually go to the workshops, but timing was always a bit of a challenge. But reaching out and consulting and collaborating is so important. And I can't tell you about the supports that we have both in the school and at UBC that are just extraordinarily helpful. So here's some of the feedback we got last year. So the proposal was strong in areas of evaluation, evidence-based need, it had a clear rationale and objectives, aligned well with TLEF's mandate. As well, the proposal provided evidence of consultation with stakeholders in the faculty and beyond. But you know there's a but coming, right? So that's how, that's how they started it. And what we wanted to do was make a movie of some sort so that we would help others know how to use forum theatre as a pedagogical mechanism for helping students to address bullying, but it could be used for all sorts of other things. So it lacked clarity in some critical areas, which were, so it was unclear who was engaging in the bullying behaviour. So one of the most basic things about our work is who is experiencing or witnessing bullying, and it's students. And, you know, we thought we had made that so clear, but obviously it was so clear to us that we actually probably didn't actually mention it. And so, like, that's a really important message, I think, the clarity of your project and your work, and some of those specifics that are self-evident will not be to readers who do not know about the project. And so they talked a little bit about that. They also talked about the resources that we were hoping to create, that they weren't very well described. They were quite vague. So important lessons to hear about that. We were asking for a lot of money. The small TLEF is 50,000, and I think we asked for 50,000. And so I learned some things from Early about how to ask for what it is you need. It may not be the absolute full amount, because it might indicate that actually that won't be enough. I'll let you read that one. And a really important message was sustainability. So some of the ideas we had last year were useful ideas. They really were behind it. They supported it. But how were we going to sustain it? And we hadn't really thought about sustainability and hadn't made it very clear how. And so what they said, which was very, very helpful in their final one, the proposal would be strengthened if the project team were to return next year, just this year, taking into consideration the feedback provided by the TLEF committee, and they did believe that there was great opportunity contained within it to create resources and modules not yet included in the nursing curriculum or healthcare curriculum. And so it was really useful to get that feedback and to take it on board, and this year to approach things a little bit differently. I think what I've alluded to, but wanted to say, the clarity of purpose, the goals of the project, and the sustainability of the project. Those are really key features to think about when you're designing something for a TLEF. Our project this year focuses on the sustainability of the CRAB initiative, and so we've been very clear about what it is that we're actually talking about. It's really important the language that you use for TLEF. There are certain languages and terminologies that I'm not familiar with. Deliverables, for example, I just don't think of deliverables. You know, we're talking about human beings, and so I tend to use different language, but sometimes you have to push that and use the language of the particular kind of governing body, even though you might prefer to use something different. So that's key to know. What is the language? Outcomes are key. Deliverables or outcomes is a different way of putting it. And something at UBC that is probably crucially important is the impact. So whether you're going up for promotion or whether you're putting in something for TLEF or other source of funding, what is the impact going to be and on whom? And so they want to know how many students are going to be affected, how many practice partners are going to be affected, whoever it is. It's also, you want to be really clear that your focus is educational scholarship. It's not research. And that's a bit of a fine line, and they may not fund you if it looks like a research project, because they will think the TLEF is not really geared towards research. There are lots of funding agencies that fund research initiatives, but this is educational scholarship. So you really want that focus to be clear. Partnerships are key, and everyone before me has mentioned how important they are. We have a partnership with Tom Schulte, who is a professor over in the Department of Theatre and Film, and he has the expertise in creating forum theatre, and so we're thrilled that he's partnering with us. UBC Studios help to make movies and all sorts of exciting things. So I went to them, they helped me provide the budget, and they gave me some feedback, and they were just terrific. And so when I presented my budget in terms of making a movie, it was realistic. It had come from them. It was much more credible. I didn't make it up last year. Actually, my son is in film, so he made it up. But the fact that, you know, it came from UBC Studios, they want to see partnerships both within and outside the university. And nursing students, we've had nursing students as part of our project always. We have 4 right now. We'll be hiring some more soon. And so that's really exciting. And I cannot say enough about Marilee and John. I hate to put them on the spot, but it seems I only learned about what they can do for us in the last year or so. And like my whole world has changed. And honestly, it's fantastic. So I just wanted a big oh, wrap up. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Our deliverables, our creation, so a train the trainer model film for forum theatre, a number of 360-degree film vignettes as interactive learning modules, a comic or a graphic novella as a student or others resource, and live performances. And so I will step right down. Sorry for going over time. Thank you. I think that's